And we are live. We're back with our founder Shashank and Mr. Mallesh from Tempo. Welcome.
Yeah, it's great to have you, Mallesh. We have had professors several times here, and every time it's been a great learning experience. So yeah, happy to have you here and learn from you. So would be great if you could just introduce yourself a bit and about Tempo and what you guys are doing.
Cool. Hi, so I'm Mallesh Pai. I am a researcher at Tempo and also a professor of economics at Rice University. I mean, so what's Tempo? Tempo is a payments first layer one blockchain. We're incubated by Stripe and Paradigm. We just went live on mainnet. And what we're trying to do is, fulfill this vision, this arc that we've had, where, the first sort of paper that coalesced everyone around blockchains, the Satoshi paper, talked about peer-to-peer cash and talked about using this, new electronic money. But we've done a lot of stuff. Blockchains have come a long way from what was envisaged in 2008, and we've made a lot of progress. But like our ability to actually scratch the surface of that core use case has been limited. Like the fraction of the planet sort of total payments volume that actually goes on blockchains is like a fraction of a percent, if not smaller. And our sort of thesis is that, like the modern economy, like payments are like the electricity of the economy. You everything else needs to happen, but you can't really like people have other needs, but everybody has to pay for something. And we want to make sure that's a first class citizen. We believe blockchains are the future, but we believe that this needs to be nailed for that vision to come to fruition. So that's Tempo. I can give you the long version of me if that's interesting, or we can dive right into it.
Yeah, we can discuss Tempo a bit since we have started on that tangent, and
Yeah,
then we can come back to you a bit
yeah.
after that. So, what do you think is a major problem that hinders adoption of the current version of blockchains? Is it about the speed, the finality, or not having payment itself as a first class citizen? What is it that stops
I mean,
adoption?
like I think it's just about taking what that there's a bunch of things that we could talk about. Like some of them have over the last year been cleared up and are being cleared up. So for instance, there was this regulatory question of are stable coins, like is that okay regulatorily?
Hmm.
There are accounting questions and other things that are not as interesting from a technologist perspective, but when it comes to the holistic system matter. Like if a business holds a stable coin on its accounts,
Hmm.
is that the same as holding cash in a bank? Is it worth the same thing? If your accountant writes the cash that you have in holds, takes the cash that you have in the bank and writes them down. If you have $100 in the bank, it writes it down at $100. But
Hmm.
$100 in stable coins, it writes it down as $20. Then you have no
Hmm.
incentive to hold your money in stable coins, right?
Yep.
So beyond regulatory, there's like accounting principles that need to get. So that's one side of that. That's the social side of the equation. Like
Hmm.
when I send, I started getting paid at some point. I was doing a little side consulting gig, and I got paid in stable coins a while back. And my wife was like, "Okay, you're getting paid. What is this USDC thing?" And I said, "Well, it's money." And she said, "Can I spend it?" And I said, "No, but we have to pay taxes on it." And she was not happy with that answer. Um, uh, so that's one side of the story. The other side is, I think, yes, like I think the modern, like we believe that the tech is basically finally ready. But even when the tech is finally ready, um, making it ready for an end user, whether that end user is a large business, that end user is a small, a startup, or that end user is like an actual individual, all of these
Hmm.
people, like that last mile is still a bit raw. And part of what we're trying to do at Tempo is like fill in that gap, get that last mile to behave the way we know already, like we can get blockchains to behave at scale, get that
Hmm.
last bit just right. So
That's nice. So, do you think a major chunk of value comes from the company's DNA itself, like having an organization which is completely focused on just payments
yeah,
and making sure they are interacting with all companies out there? Because you cannot do payments with just like end users. It's difficult to
exactly.
scale it's difficult to promote. So if you have an entity that is fully focused on getting businesses integrated, listening to those businesses, identifying their needs, and filling out those gaps, do you think that's where like the major value comes from, and it's not just the tech?
Yeah, I think that is a major part of, like, you can't, like, one of the things that you see, like, and that this I come from a theory background. Like, one of the things that is great about theory is it allows you to reason about things in the
Yep.
abstract. The problem is you could be reasoning about the entirely wrong things. And some of what I see is that we've built these things, and in some cases, like, no shade at any competitor or anything, but just overall in the history of tech, we've built these things. They have we think they're amazing, but we're not building the right thing. We're not building the thing that our customer actually needs. So part of our value add, I wouldn't say it's all of it, but I think an important part is that we're spending a lot of time with, like, these design partners, and the hope is that these design partners, starting from Stripe, but then there's a whole list of logos across our webpage. Visa's been talking to us, Klarna, Deal. I'm blanking on the others, but, like, there's lots of names, both of, like, large multinational corporations who want to get into blockchains bigger, but also, like, smaller startups. That are blockchain first and want to say, okay, this is what we really need to push it over the top. So working with them has really given us a lot of clarity on, like, what are those little last mile features. Some of my colleagues get irritated at the word feature, but I think it sort of summarizes that we're not necessarily looking at this stage. We're not looking for the next 10x breakthrough. What we're looking for is what Joel Mokyr, who won the Nobel Prize last year in economics, he had this theory of micro inventions. So, like, the macro invention is the steam engine, but for the steam engine to unlock productivity gains that it did across medieval Europe, there were these micro inventions, like little things like, oh, this little unlock in metallurgy that let us go to a higher pressure piston, so that we could actually make it more useful rather than just experiment, like make it lighter. Like, these little things unlock a lot more of the actual productivity gain of the macro invention. So we have this macro invention, blockchain. We have a lot of micro inventions ahead of us on, like, how do you unlock all these customers so that they can do all the things that they want to do, stay compliant for the ones who want to be compliant, get privacy for the ones who want privacy, do new, like, novel stuff on agents and so on for the ones who want to do that, all while still using this technology that we think is so cool.
Nice. What would you say is the one feature which nobody in crypto Twitter would have thought about or even discussed or paid attention to, but you found that was super important for the businesses, the Web2 businesses?
This is going to come off as a bit of a meme, but let me tell you, like, so every in the real world, payments, like, go across multiple systems, right? They go across multiple systems, and one thing you need the ability to tie the same payment across these multiple systems. So I am sending, I'm sitting here in New York. I have a family member in Delhi, let's say, and I send money to them, and correspondent banking is going to send the money across, like, 4 banks and 4 different bank systems and whatever. So what they do is they create, like, so Swift, for example, has this thing called a UETR, a little tag, little 36-byte tag, but actually 4 of those bytes are hyphens, so you can take them out, 32-byte tag. And that travels across so that you can tie this payment from this bank to this bank was actually part the same transaction as from this bank to this bank, from this bank to this bank, and then it got to Malesh's mom or whatever. Somehow, our block, like, we did all this fancy stuff, went to 10,000 TPS, 100,000 TPS, whatever we can do on all these blockchains, but we never internalized this idea that blockchains are just part of the picture for a lot of large enterprises. Like, for enterprises doing stuff at scale, they want to tie the blockchain leg of the payment, where they might have done 30 payments in the same transaction, with who is those payments for in their internal backend system, their tax reporting system, their ERP system. So what we did when our stablecoin standard was this one trivial, dumb thing called transfer with memo. So along with the transfer ERC, there's a new ERC function called transfer with memo that takes one additional bytes 32 argument. And
Mhm.
everyone, like every time we went, I remember, like I have incredibly bright colleagues, and we wanted to tell them about all these cool things we've done. We've got this, we've got a fee AMM that let you pay in any stable coin. And every time everyone would be like, "Oh, you can do transfer with memos. We so need memos. Thank you so much." But I think we have like other things, like so one of the things that's important about the blockchain, for example, is that natively anyone can pay fees in any stable coin. So you don't need to do like a custom integration. You can just show
Mhm.
up. You have your stable coin, and you can you can both transfer that, do your payments, and also fees will be deducted in that. We have a fee AMM in the background that lets this run efficiently, and that's a big unlock. Our customers have told us there's some there's native account abstraction that makes things that customers, like enterprises, take for granted, their ability to provide these kind of apps to their users. Venmo, Zelle in the US, other things in other countries, where the customer never sees fees, the customer never deals with things like gas. So our ability to abstract that away from the consumer, we provide them the tools to do that, and we're hoping that creates a bunch of unlocks.
Nice. And it's funny how it happens, because as a technologist, you look at like these big things and you're proud of them because they took time, and you understand how difficult those were to implement. But somehow, a lot of times, they are not at all correlated with what the clients or the consumers find important.
Yeah.
And it's those small things which they see value in. So I remember once at Goldman, some team had created an extension for Excel where you could
Mhm.
export that thing as a PDF, which
Right.
is like super simple thing to do. Anyone
Right.
can do that in like
Yeah.
half an hour. But that was like the biggest thing they ever loved. They were
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is the biggest value unlock. You have made us 10x more productive, and so on.
Exactly. Like,
So, yeah.
so like that this I that Joel Mokir's theory like really resonates with me. Like, like his version of this was like, Steve Jobs was not a great inventor, and I'm not
Mhm.
comparing myself to Steve Jobs, please don't get me flamed on Twitter, but I think Steve Jobs was not a great inventor, but he was a great micro inventor. He always
Right.
understood, like, here are the pieces, here are the Lego blocks. I just need this one little thing to unlock something big. And like
Mhm.
having the ability to do that with like that in ways that like abstract complexity away from the user, I think that's and make them like able to use your system effectively, like that's going to be the next big thing for us, and that's what
Yeah.
we're kind of focused on. Well, that's
Yeah.
that's sort of one thing we care a lot about. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And also figuring out what those smallest set of things is that actually make the product work,
Yeah.
instead of just putting everything there and just hope it'll work out with more and more features. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, super cool. So, but by the way, since we're talking about Swift, like just help me on this. Swift is just a messaging protocol, right? You
That's right.
just like send. It doesn't like
Yeah.
take care of money or anything. You just
No, that's
are sending
yeah.
message.
So I love to talk about this. Here's the international money moves today the same way that the system that it moves by was invented by the Medicis in the 1400s. So this blows everyone's mind. So how does money move? Like in the US, if I want to send, I mean, obviously it's very easy. If I bank at Bank of America and you bank at Bank of America and I want to send money to you, in theory that's easy. Bank of America just transfers within their own ledger.
Yep.
If I bank at Bank of America and you bank at Chase, but we're both in America, that's slightly more complicated, but it's still easy, right? What's effectively going to happen is for small enough transfers, they Chase will say something like, "Hey," or whoever's Bank of America will tell Chase, "Hey, put $100 in Shashank's account, and I'm good for it. We'll batch it up over whatever." And we transfer over one central layer, which is like all of these banks have accounts at the Fed, and those master accounts are how they settle up net with each other.
Mhm.
Okay, and there are other ways too, but that's sort of the broad idea.
Mhm.
There is no, obviously, like, well, there is a World Bank, but that's not what they're totally different. So there's no way for banks to send money across to other countries. Like there's no like holding, no one, there's no like entity everyone trusts that can hold everyone's money. So what they do is they hold pieces of each other's money. So these are called Vostro and Nostro accounts. And as you can tell from the Italian/Latin, these go back. It means yours and mine. Like, what's happening is if I have an account at Bank of America and I want to send to India, maybe my bank doesn't have a Worcester Nostro account. Like they don't have a direct correspondent relationship with like a bank in India, but maybe they have a bank in England. So they will go to the English bank and say, hey, this guy needs to send money to India. You have some of my money. Take that money out of my account. Here's the permission. And credit it onwards to the account for the Indian bank, who will then take it, who will then. So that's how now it's, and actually we didn't get to talk. You're a CS major, I'm presuming, maybe. No.
Yeah.
So, DNS, like how does DNS work? DNS works by routing forward every time, right? So I don't necessarily pre-specify the whole route. If I need to get to a server in Japan, my thing just goes to a gateway. The gateway moves forward to something it thinks is closer to Japan, and so on. Here, the entire system has to be specified in advance. So the entire route has to be specified in advance. So my bank will contact the Indian, my bank has to tell Chase, maybe, which has to tell the English bank, which has to tell maybe the Spanish bank, which tells the Indian bank. That entire route is specified in advance. If any of those any intermediate leg fails, the thing returns back. It's a total pile of complexity. Every message, every bank, when it does that transfer, it has to redo the KYC checks because it doesn't want to be a leg of an illicit transfer. So it will recheck, is Mallesh Pai legit? Is Mallesh Pai's mom legit? Like, are all the details that we need in there? It's a whole other thing. So Swift is just the messaging layer where banks instruct each other, hey, please do these deductions and additions from our from our accounts with each other. So it's a bank messaging standard, basically.
So, I mean, just thinking from it, can't they? So suppose I'm a bank, I cannot directly send to another country. So can't I just send it to all the banks I can send it to and ask them, okay, can you move it forward, or like some intermediary which might take it to the next bank?
So these are like, there are all sorts of versions of this kind of enhancement that are happening. So one version that's happening is this wonderful project called Project Agora out of the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements. And what they're doing is they're basically saying, instead of sending the money and then the bank doing the KYC and then moving it forward, let's optimistically do the KYC on the whole route. Everyone say approve, and then the money just zips through, so that the money doesn't get stuck somewhere in the middle. It either goes all the way through or doesn't go at all. So that's one improvement. Like, yes, DNS would be a different improvement. Like having some version of DNS and optimistic routing would be a different improvement. But like, you got to understand, like all of these systems, like bank systems, major parts of like bank mainframes are still written in COBOL. And I'm older than you. Even they didn't teach COBOL when I was in undergrad. They also didn't teach COBOL when like it's a like they're still stuck. They and the thing is that system is so critical that they're like scared to move it. Like one of the things that's happening is like modern banks, like truly new banks, the ones that are coming up that are like blockchain first or something, like they have this benefit that they're just writing a new core banking service from scratch, and they can do it in modern languages, have modern APIs. But like a bank, an existing bank that has been here for 40, 50 years, has its COBOL mainframe. Changing that would be scary because it's like changing your engine mid-flight. You can't lose customers' money. There's lots of exceptions and code spaghetti built into those things. I have this story I love to tell, which is like, one of my friend's mom. So my friend, they moved here in the 80s, in the 90s, while the kids were in high school. My friend's mom started taking like just some computer classes, and then she joined a bank as a low-level programmer, and she was doing perfectly nice, living in a suburb, sort of perfectly nice middle-class income. And then like 2 years ago, she's like, I have grandkids now, I want to quit. And the bank was like, no, you can't quit, you can't retire. Here are piles of money, just stay. No one can write COBOL anymore. So maybe
Yeah.
ChatGPT fixes this, but
Yeah, I mean, I saw this in one of the news that Claude is doing pretty well at COBOL programs now, so a lot
yeah,
of old people can retire. I mean,
yeah,
we have worked with them too much.
that'd be lovely. But yeah, we'll see we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I think that's and the other thing that's interesting is like a lot of these banks, like we have all these mergers and acquisitions, and the bank, the branding and the front end and the website changes, but normally the bank retains two different core banking systems and slowly does a lazy state transition to try and move everything into one over time, rather than like paying the cost of this. So there's all that kind of stuff going on in the
Yeah.
back.
So how would you say this the process of international transfer would look if the banks are using blockchain?
I mean, so that's one of the reasons I think international transfers, especially, are ones that can be speeded up the most, and where there's
Mhm.
like, in terms of pure, let's say, pure value add, like direct value add. I think that is one of the easiest ones, which
Mhm.
is just what is the process of transferring money to somebody. Like even if both legs don't have, let's say it's I have no blockchain stuff, and my mom at the other end really has no blockchain
Mhm.
experience. What can still happen is what's called the stablecoin sandwich. So the stablecoin
Mhm.
sandwich is I send money, US dollars,
Mhm.
to some entity. What that entity does is it basically takes, so it's an on ramp, takes the money, credits to my account, to my virtual account, whatever. Maybe this is entirely invisible to me. Money to my um, in a stable coin, in a US dollar stable coin. That money
Mhm.
goes whoop, 1 second, less than a second, goes to the wallet, goes to the wallet of like an off ramper. So
Mhm.
somebody who in India receives the payment. I should note that like India, for example, restricts stable coins. So this is between countries
Yeah.
that do allow this in various ways. But so somebody in some entity receives the dollars and
Mhm.
then just credits the rupees into a bank account or into whatever format
Mhm.
via UPI that my mother wants to receive it in. So the legs that are now painful are actually, or the most complicated legs, because it's one transfer in the middle that,
Mhm.
that needs accounting and that needs careful tracking and so on. But the complexity is now actually in the on ramp and the off ramp. Somebody has
Mhm.
to take dollars, make them into stable coins. Someone at the other end has to do something even more complicated, which is take dollar stable coins and make them into rupees.
Mhm.
Uh, but because it's a second, there's not that much chance for the rupee price to move. So the on ramper and the off ramper can agree, for example, what is the rupee price that will be paid out? What are the fees? All of
Mhm.
that. So that's the stablecoin sandwich. That's a very popular method. It's a lot of money is flowing among US to LATAM corridors, both back and
Mhm.
forth, using the stablecoin sandwich. US Europe less so because the market is super efficient, but still it's also a much larger forex market.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's US to Southeast Asia. There's lots of like permutations
Mhm.
and combinations. You can imagine why there are specific directional or bidirectional flows based on like
Mhm.
and they get moved around a lot. Yeah.
Nice. And all it requires is for the banks to have an on ramp and off ramp partners, right?
It might not be a bank in this case. Like, so
Mhm.
lots of people. So, for example, like the old money move or old and newer money movement specialists, like the money grants, the wises of the world, all these guys, they are looking into this because they want to save on costs.
Mhm.
Newer entities are coming in, like a dollar, which renamed itself as ARC.
Mhm.
Uh, they're coming in because they see a way to offer a better experience than the traditional like Western Union.
Mhm.
There's lots of things in between. So
Okay.
and sometimes, and now banks are, some of them are thinking, okay, we want to get into this because we can circumvent the Swift message, the
Mhm.
long correspondent banking. Correspondent banking also means that like large portions of capital are stuck. Like I need to have this deposit in my correspondent bank's account, and
Mhm.
that summed up across all banks having, you have n banks, that you have roughly n banks doing correspondent work, like that's order of n square money, like correspondent accounts that need to be maintained, because routing in, and I mean, capital efficiency forces it, but there's only so much limits. People want direct connections. So all of that means, like, that's, depending on who you ask, it's between the order of hundreds of billions of dollars locked up to trillions of dollars locked up in these correspondent banking accounts.
And so there's this question I have had several answers to, but I'm not satisfied with either of them.
Yeah.
So whenever we make transactions, banks charge a percentage fee on everything, which as a computer scientist never made sense to me, because it's just an entry in database that needs to be changed. So like, what's the point of charging more if you transfer more money? So like, what's the point?
I think, like, there's two facts to this. One is, like, there's a lot, I think this gets elided over a lot. Like, part of what they do is they just change two entries in a database, and that should be a minimal marginal cost thing. But part of it is that they, depending on what exact entry in a database you're talking about, there's a lot of value-added features. And there's this question of unbundling, which of those features are actually needed. So, like, what the one that gets a lot of, I think, mention on Twitter or whatever is credit card fees. So credit card interchange is something like, every time if I pay $100 at a restaurant, the restaurant receives something like 97 in the US. And that's 3%. It's not all going to the credit card company. It gets split between my bank that issued me the credit card, the bank of the merchant that issued them their device, other intermediaries, and the credit card company. But
in case of credit card, it makes sense, because their business model is that you are increasing spending. So, I mean, for that, they are charging the card. But if you're transferring money from one place to another, I mean, I hope they have to hold certain Forex reserves. They have to make several point of transactions, like you explained before. So is it because of that they have this percentage fee rather than a flat one?
I mean, I think for it depends, right? So for example, for if it's an international transfer, then yes, they will charge a percentage fee, and you can get pretty low percentage fees if you're willing to. Some of it is just price discrimination. They know that you need to get the money home, and that there are no cheaper ways to do it out there. I think eventually competition will drive it down. Some of it is foreign exchange slippage, so they're charging a portion. That's part of it is just their cost of then doing the Forex stuff. So you don't get offered exactly the same rate that Citibank gets on its transfers, or a large corporate gets. But I think most of the things, at least that I've seen, that are percentage related for banks are Forex related transactions. And I don't think I can justify the magnitude of those fees, but the fact that those fees are percentage based, like, some of it just has to do with FX slippage in my mind. So, like,
And since we are talking about payments, and we discussed a bit about credit cards, how are you going, guys, at Tempo, looking to expand into under collateralized credit? Because on blockchains, all we have seen is the over collateralized ones, and it helps, but it doesn't help like grow as much. Whereas if we could have credit histories, like histories of wallets, under collateralized would like it would increase the industry in a much more better way. So how are you going, guys, looking to expand there?
I don't think we have anything I think there's nothing immediate to announce there. I think for us, like, there's a primitive that needs to be unlocked first, which is some notion of identity. Like, the reason I can do under collateralized lending is because what are you actually borrowing against? You're borrowing against your future ability to borrow. Right? If I and there's a reason, for example, it's much harder to get, I believe this changed since I left, but like, it's much harder to get a loan, or it used to be very hard to get an under collateralized loan in India. And it got much easier over the years, right? Which is, we created systems of credit credit scoring and so on. What is a credit? So what are you borrowing against when you borrow on just your credit score? You're basically saying, if I don't repay today, then my ability to borrow tomorrow is kind of screwed.
Yep.
So we need those notions of reputation and identity, and that's inherently hard in a permissionless anonymous system, because I always have the option to walk away and be anonymous. So
there's no legal repercussions.
There's no legal repercussion. So we'd either need some way to reach into, like, it could be an opt-in way that people reveal themselves if they want. So there are companies doing super interesting stuff on this, like there's 3Jane and so on. But I think there's just a lot of I think there's just a lot of like more basic primitives we need to unlock before we can unlock. Yeah.
What about things like chargebacks? How do you think they could work with, like, should there be a smart contract where like the payments go through that, and whenever a chargeback is initiated, that smart contract like deducts the value and the money always stays there?
Yeah. Again, chargebacks I think are interesting. Like in Visa, when I issue you if I buy something from you and then I start a chargeback, it's not like Visa directly reaches into your account and pulls the money out, right? It's not. So like when I swipe a Visa card and buy something from you, Visa actually, like, the way it works, like, it pays out the merchant in depending on the merchant type, like 1 to 2 days. Most merchants get paid within like 2 days, let's say, 2 business banking days. I could start a chargeback 40 days later. I could charge a chargeback 90 days later. I was once like really irritated by something, and I started a chargeback 90 days later, and Visa honored it. So no escrow contract is going to allow, like, no merchant is going to be willing to sell stuff and have the money held in escrow for 90 days. Again, it's a form of it. What you need is a form of reputation, identity, contracting. What does Visa do? Visa says, well, look, merchant, if you want to be able to accept Visa cards, these are our rules. If we arbitrate and find you have to pay back the money, well, you have to pay back the money. Otherwise, you'll be kicked off the Visa system. So that's the system that you need. I don't think it needs, like, I don't think, at least the basic, like, you can make it more efficient with, like, or certain forms of basic contracting can be made more efficient with like a smart contract. But I think the core idea of something like a chargeback is still an off-chain or like an agreement between two known parties. That's what's driving these things.
Okay. Yeah, I think for it to be like in an anonymous system, to have identity to some extent, it should be such that the urge to remain on the platform or holding on to your wallet is so much that you would accept a chargeback rather than your, like, the value of your account or your wallet going down, because that affects you more.
And that's for any, like, and that's exactly what happens, right? On the real on Visa and so on. You as a business, you run a restaurant, you are never going to risk losing your ability to get Visa cards, right? Like your business is over. You can't run a restaurant without credit cards right now. So yeah.
What's your take on privacy there? How important have you found businesses to be like, I mean, unless there's privacy, we won't be using it because everyone can see what we are sending to whom. And that's like super important for businesses.
Yeah, I think I think privacy has been one of the interesting ones. Like, a lot of businesses do want privacy. A lot of people want privacy. And there's two parts to it. One, I think, like, for a lot of traditional businesses, they're willing to ship a pilot, something like that, without privacy, but they really want privacy to work. They're used to privacy. They are worried about, like, I'm worried about, like, I run a marketplace. If you're telling me like stable coins can make something 1% cheaper, but or whatever, cut out 1% transaction fees. But if I use this, maybe everybody can back out who are my most popular merchants. They can back out how much those merchants make. A competing marketplace can come and steal those merchants from me. Like all of that is problematic, right? You as a business want privacy. Individual users obviously want privacy. Like I don't want my colleagues to know or anyone to know like if my salary is being paid on chain, like how much I'm making. So the trouble is that every privacy solution or the ones that we looked at, like there's like this three things, right? So what are the things we want from a privacy solution? One, we want actual privacy. Let's agree on that. We want some notion of usability. So like a lot of things will say something like, hey, you need this other wallet. Or hey, like what we do is we give you this note with this Pedersen nullifier, and you have to store the note. And if you can't send back that note, the money is gone, right? Like that kind of UX. That it's just too scary for a business to say, oh, I'm going to trust my users with this. Or, for example, or just too complicated. Like there's that. Then there's interoperability. Like you want to be able to use the things. Like, does it actually work with the existing tooling? Does it actually work with the liquidity that's out there? So we're hoping to announce sort of our approach to this. I want to say in a couple of weeks. It'll be like a more pragmatic take that tries to get around these issues. But our basic, it's still going to be like a beta product. It's going to, or whatever. It's going to be a stage one. We don't think it's the end game for privacy, whatever that might mean. But I think that's a path forward where we can just make pragmatic choices and not try and solve everything at the same time.
Just prying a bit into it, is it more of a like off-chain ZK or like homomorphic encryption kind of solution, or like nothing of the sorts?
Yeah, it's a mix. It's some. I think we'll know we've succeeded when we've pissed everyone off. Like that's.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so do you believe in like next 2-3 years, it'll be more humans using Tempo, or will it be AI agents?
I think there's going to be, I've gone back and forth on this. I think there's going to be a stage where, or there's going to be a period where agents do take over. I don't know if it happens. Like if you'd asked me 6 months ago, I'd have said it's 5 years away. And then like everyone else, I was, vibe coding in December, and I'm like, holy, what have we unleashed? And then suddenly like everything went vertical, right? Like for a couple of weeks, like it was just amazing. So I think that could be that hockey stick moment. I just don't know when. It could be in the next 2 years. I do think it'll happen in the next 5. I think what's really exciting about it is the following, which is like agents. Like what was the big Claude Code unlock? Like I think the big Claude Code unlock or Codex unlock of November, December was not that the agent per se got much smarter about, like it was not a smarter foundation model. It was an agent that was just much better at using tools. And because of its ability to use tools, it was just more composable. Like you couldn't program everything into the agent, but like, the way we've been taught in like our undergrad computer science, you want to make modular things that are able to work with other things. And then you can, that's why Legos are so cool, right? We finally had like agent Legos. And even though we haven't figured out sub-agents and stuff yet, just agents and APIs was already like just suddenly it was like whoosh, you can do these whole complex workflows with just one prompt to an agent. The current gating on that is an agent can't pay for stuff. So it has to be either a sort of command line tool that you already have, or a service that you have already paid for that you can compose together. And we think there's a lot of like value adds that could be like these microservices that have never had a reason to exist. But if they're monetizable, they have a reason to exist. And my analogy for this is something like, content creation between, in the 80s or the 90s, if you were a creative person, you'd spend your life try and get, move to LA, try and get to Hollywood or to the big, or to New York, get to one of the big studios, try to convince them to have, let you be a writer, let you be a director, producer, actor, whatever, in a big movie, in a show, in a cable show. And then the internet came along, and once it was possible to monetize just by creating YouTube videos, you have all this massive fringe of people who create very specific micro like content targeted at some community, and
Yep.
they can perfectly make a very nice living from that. So there's a guy who just does car reviews for consumer cars. There's another person who just does some other thing, and they can. I think there'll be like this rise of micro APIs, these targeted services that you didn't know you wanted. You had to buy as an omnibus collection from like Google or something. You bought like this entire enterprise suite, but actually someone can issue just your API, and they have incentives to run and maintain that API because they don't have to do market discovery anymore. They can just charge you per use. They don't have to be exposed. So just the way we had this unbundling of content, we could have this unbundling of APIs, and that's the period you'll see like online payments, I think, take off, online micropayments of that form. So that's my thesis. I have, it could be next week, it could be next year. The one thing I learned as an economist is a good economist should predict an event or a time, never both. So you should say something like the markets are going to go down, or you should say, April will be an important month, but never the markets will go down in May. So.
Of course. So do you think at least for enterprise agents, that monthly level of payments, like you get an invoice at the end of a month rather than doing micropayments, is a better structure than having agents call APIs all the time? Or because at least for enterprise, I think one set of payments is better because workflows are kind of well defined. These are the 10 APIs you could be using, and then you can negotiate good terms on those APIs. And at the end of month, like you get your AWS bill kind of, and then you can pay that off. Whereas for something like more like user-facing agents, they could interact with the whole internet. So in that case, maybe having those micropayments which can access like all of the internet at once without getting permission from the users would be more of a better fit. Like, happy to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on this. I think what's like, if there's some core workflow, obviously you're gonna like just buy that in bulk in advance. But even on those core workflows, like enterprises, we spend any enterprise, like it does a lot of internal metering as well. And the thing is, like, you don't just, when you have a company, for example, when it's travel, you will have some sort of metering, right? So you will tell your sales department, okay, your travel budget for the next month is $50,000. And if you need, and then the sales head will, go and say, Asia, you get $10,000 of travel, and US, you get $20,000. And we'll meter and sub-meter and so on. Companies, the issue is you can't meter, like currently, metering APIs is actually complicated even internally, but you do want to meter them. What ends up happening is you get these bill shocks, right? So a startup, like, suddenly at the end of the month, they're like, oh, our Vercel bill is like $8,000 and it was like $500 before. And it's a skill issue, forgot to turn on like the alerting and so on. But also it's just like, somebody had just flicked, like on one of the internal projects had just flicked the wrong configuration switch, was using some compute that they didn't need to use, and no one was monitoring. So you can either set up complicated monitoring, or you can just pay. And companies, especially larger companies, find it easier to use prices as a signal internally as well. That's why there's like one of the largest divisions within like consulting firms are internal transfer pricing, where just tells companies how do you price things for internal resources. You need to meter things because prices are the best way. I'm going my economist hat here, but prices are the best way for allocating scarce resources. If you make them free, people don't know how to account for the fact that they're an overall scarce resource. So I think we'll see internal metering of some sort, probably payments, maybe like credits, like maybe the company will give every employee like some, here is your AI credit, here, you can use it any way you want. All the APIs are metered so that as a company, we know roughly how much our API bills are going to be at the end of the month. And this is different from like a core workflow
Mhm.
People still have to do stuff. They don't always know exactly what they need every second, and they don't want to have to involve whatchamacallit. They don't want to have to involve purchasing and the sales department and whatever.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it does speed things up if agent can just access API
Yeah,
directly rather than getting all the permissions,
yeah,
getting into meetings with those companies, then
exactly.
identifying a good rate for their APIs. Then
Yeah,
yeah, it just takes longer. I have lots of questions, but we are almost out of time, and we,
yeah.
we have this another rapid fire round. So let's do that.
Okay.
So both
Yeah.
of you gentlemen are from Delhi, IT Delhi. Can you share one of your best memories from university?
Shashank, you go first.
um uh, like the best ones like can't be told here. They they are supposed to remain yeah, not in public. Yeah.
Yeah. um yeah, well, yeah, obviously not the best ones, but the ones that can be shared here. So there was this god, man, I think I spent just 4 straight years in Delhi with Delhi Belly, but the food was just so good. And there was this paratha place back near Triple IT
Mhm.
uh, that we'd go to regularly. There was just a whole sequence that we rotated around. And I'm a bit of a foodie. My dad and mom would keep saying like, come home and eat, or eat at the hostel mess, which was god awful.
Yep.
But yeah, the food is.
Great.
I do miss parts of the food.
Did
All
you
right,
have
so
sasi
since Shashank,
paratha?
you don't want to share a fun move, can you share a horror story about your days in the
Just before
university?
that, with Mallesh, did you have sasi paratha back then?
We did have
Are you-
Sassi. We did have Sassi. Sassi was that was the one up at the edge near Kumau. No, Kumau. nahi, kaun sa hai? What's
the hostel gate just
Coastal Gate?
outside?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the one by that, right? Yeah, yeah. Of course, it was there. It's been there forever.
Oh,
But Tanku's was my favorite. So,
oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Question.
yeah.
All
Question.
right,
Sorry.
a horror story from university days.
Like
Oh
I don't
man.
want to reveal those things, bro. Those are.
Oh, my
Okay.
horror. So my horror story is like actually I have one that I can reveal, which was just it nearly ended very badly, which was so I got dengue, which was fine, and I was also going through some stuff, which was fine. But I basically like checked out for a month in the middle of IIT, so like middle
Mhm,
of the fall semester of my final year,
mhm,
and I had during that year also chosen to join debate clubs. I was representing IIT at a bunch of debates and doing a bunch of other stuff. So I went like week before the finals. I went for a week to debate international debate competition in Bangalore. Came back. My friends were mad at me because I hadn't done the programming assignments. They're like, "You finish all of this, or we all fail. We don't care anymore. You've been free
yeah.
riding for too long." The topology professor was mad at me because I hadn't been around for a month. He's like, "WTF, dude? You're failing." So like I got D's or F's in like 4
Mhm.
out of my 6 classes. Um, I somehow navigated that. Maybe it's I don't think I've told my mom yet, and hopefully she's not listening to the podcast.
Yeah.
So,
I think I think most of our students, at least in our college, go through that phase when there's a period when everything in the studies is somehow going wrong. Either you're busy with something or like, yeah, it just happens. So I can relate to that.
all right, last university question, then we move to. So you both are building in AI and crypto. Which gave you more stress and anxiety? First product launch or end of semester at house, guys?
End of semester is rough for like probably first, second semester. After that, you kind of get used to it because there are exams all the time. Like every few, like I think there are exams like every week, every 2 weeks. So it's like part of life. You are always giving exams, so you just get used to it.
So product launch.
Yeah.
All
Interesting.
right.
I'd almost go the other way. Like product launch is scary, but like one of the benefits you have, I have, and I'm sure it's the same for you, Shashank, is like I have this team, I have this amazing team. Basically, it's all goats and me.
Yep.
So I both like you kind of the first one was a little stressful, like the first sort of launch, but then you also learn to just trust the process and that there's a
Yep.
lot of really sharp people who completely plugged in, and will adapt every time, like whatever curveballs life throws. University was more of a, you're 20 and you just live on the fact that you believe you're immortal. But I think, like, again, the semester after that, I did learn my lesson, and I think I didn't sleep. I slept all of like 3 hours in a week. I was like somewhat, discombobulated at the end. Uh,
Mhm.
Final exam, final semester, like, but I made it out. So we're there now.
All right. So this question is just for you, Malesh. You spent a decade as an economic professor in Rice, in Penn, while
Yeah.
still young. When you were still
15
in your
actually. I
academic
think I'm
day,
coming up on 16 years. So yeah.
awesome, 16 years.
Yeah.
So when you were like back, like deep in as an economic professor, how did crypto look to you? Did you
Mhm.
have resistance into like moving into crypto, or did
Yeah.
you get the idea?
So the one, I'll probably get killed on this, but the one thing, like my wife in 2012 or 2011 is like, hey, have you heard about this Bitcoin thing? We should really just buy some. And she was like, oh, let's just buy $1,000. And I was like, nah, this whatever. I hadn't studied it yet. And now I'm like, she still tells me, she's like, you're doing crypto now, bro. But if you'd listened to me back then, we'd both be retired. So yeah, so it took me like, I think 2011, 2012, I spent a lot of time studying, like I was relearning because I did my undergrad, but then I completely left and went to do economics. So I was relearning cryptography. I was relearning some of these basic ideas on how do the ingredients of Bitcoin come together. And then I again checked out for a while, which is lack of imagination on my part. But I had friends, I had colleagues, both like research colleagues and also friends from undergrad who were like going, feeling this pull. So they started joining. They were joining investment firms, crypto native investment firms. They were joining projects, and they kept saying, "Hey, this stuff is real." And finally, around the pandemic, I was both like, I had a friend who kept talking to me about DeFi and had no idea what DeFi was. I'd heard the term, but I hadn't been paying attention. And I had friends who were, so that was one part. And at the same time, I was teaching this sort of free form upper level elective class where I wanted something new and exciting to teach the students, because I felt like that would drive back some, enthusiasm about the class, rather than, oh, let's just learn about game theory in the abstract. So those were the two things. So I started learning about DeFi, and then I got super excited because I'm like, I don't know if DeFi will work, but if DeFi has to work, there need to be more like mechanism designers involved, because we have to fix the underlying incentive issues. And that was when I started paying more and more attention and started tweeting, learning, meeting. I met Tarun, I met Max, I met all the Tim Roughgarden I knew, but I re-met. So like this community of like researchers working in like trying to get blockchains right. Yeah, that was the process by which I like that was the period where I started doing less and less classical academia and more like blockchain research.
All right.
Great.
So questions for you, Shashank. Back at your Goldman days, how did working in crypto sound to like your friends and colleagues and people in the industry?
So I actually did a master's level course in blockchain back in college when it was still early. I think it was in 2017. Yeah, 2017. It was a good course. So the first thing we did was going through the Bitcoin paper, then learning about Ethereum, learning about some other protocols which are not alive now but were big back then. And yeah, it was great. There were a lot of cool stuff to do, a lot of awesome things to learn. Didn't buy anything after doing that course. It would have been a better decision to just buy something. Um, at Goldman, most people hadn't heard about it. Most people barely knew about AI back then. Um, it was more about finance there. But but I did explore it before working there.
All right. So from now on, all these questions are for both, whoever wants to take it first. So in transactions in crypto, if you had to prioritize 2 out of 3, which would be cost, speed, and trust? This is a tough question, I know.
I'll take speed and trust. I think like this idea that we need to go like down to like the 10 to the minus 10 cents or whatever for this to be worth it. No, we have a massive wedge between how much the real world, like TradFi payment costs, and how much a cheap blockchain transaction costs. There's no reason. What we really need to do is, like, we're trying to be like the super cheap Android phone, where really users want iPhones. I think, like,
Mhm.
I have an Android, so don't kill me for the analogy, Twitter. But like, I think people want the end-to-end experience, and they're willing to pay for it if it
Mhm.
just works. Versus
Yeah.
like, here's, like, you only pay a millionth of a cent for a transaction, but here's a IKEA box, and go set it up yourself.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would also choose speed and trust because focusing on costs, like pro, it limits your thinking from coming up with good solution, providing value, and you're always thinking of cutting corners and just focusing on price. I think you should just focus on delivering value, and the product just prices itself. And cost is one thing that you can optimize over time, but you cannot optimize trust over time. So that's definitely has to be there. And speed, of course, is part of UX. So unless your product is good enough, even if you make it free, nobody's going to use it. So those two are necessary.
All right. Another tough one. Is there some DeFi primitive that's doing more harm than good?
I would say DeFi is like a technology. A technology by the nature of itself is not good or bad. There can be good or bad actors. You could use perps to like launder money or like trade on some random stuff which doesn't add value. You can rip off people using perps, but perps themselves are not bad. So I don't think there's like any bad primitive per se. There are bad actors in almost everything. So and that's true everywhere.
True.
Yeah, I think that's where I land up. There's this quote by Picasso, which is something to the tune of, computers let people make more mistakes faster than anything else known to man, with the exception of tequila and handguns. Um, and I feel like the issues with DeFi are not DeFi. Like, it's not DeFi is bad per se. It's just that when you take something and you make it hyper efficient and
Mhm.
composable, like, any mistake that is anywhere in the system can amplify in ways that you don't. So it makes you very. So, like, how do we design, like, especially for end consumers, how do we design it with the right handrails? I think that's sort of that's the real question we need to answer.
So I think in that code we can replace computers with AI agents now because
Yeah,
there's no
exactly. Yeah.
chance of making mistakes. Right?
It's
Absolutely.
just, yeah, you can do so much more damage so much faster.
Yeah.
And this has been rediscovered. This is not special to DeFi, by the way. Like, we've rediscovered this in every history of TradFi, right? Like,
Mhm.
every new technology, there was the options, pricing free crash of like 1989 in Wall Street.
Mhm.
There was, like, every time we rediscovered something, savings and loan, CDOs, like, every technology, something is blown up. DeFi is
Yeah.
not special. It's not DeFi's fault. It's just we have to learn where the guardrails should be.
And that also talks about the power and the leverage of that technology because if the technology is so powerful that it affects so many people and there are so many users, a lot of capital involved, how powerful it is. But yeah, I mean that's why if you have some problems there, it will be amplified because that's
Yeah.
the nature of its power.
Since we're talking about mistakes, here's a fun one. There's only two questions left. So, if your AI agents had control of your bank account and makes one big hallucination, like for example, buying 100 kilos of coffee wherever, what's the most likely mistake he'll make?
Yeah, so the way I mean internally we make our AI agents work. There's like set of actions they can do, and there are limits there. So and they are behind an API. So if they try to do something like that, the API call itself would fail, and they won't be able to do that. And I mean that's the only way to make them work like all the time because in case of agentic finance, even you could lose all money in one transaction. So unless you have something like that, I wouldn't like trust any platform without these kind of structures.
There was a fun conversation that someone put online. So when we launched MPP last week, you could buy, like, you could have your agent order a sandwich at Prospect Butcher Shop in Brooklyn, And the guy was like, okay, order me, like, what are the sandwiches? And the agent was like, I ordered you the turkey and ham. And that was the only sandwich that was $10. And for some reason, either it was a pricing glitch or a promotion, like all the other sandwiches were $1. It's like, dude, you bought me the $10 sandwich. And but they were all $1 sandwiches. Like, yeah, my fault, but it's your money. So you're, you know,
I mean, it could also say I
agent
identify.
that, like, it's your money. I don't actually.
Yeah, I mean, it could also say I've identified that you like turkey and bacon so
Yeah.
much that was the only right sandwich for you. So that's all I'm gonna do.
All right. So that actually brings us to our last question. What are the characteristics of an AI agent that makes you want to trust it? Like, what do you require from an AI agent to like trust it with your money?
I mean, so when it comes to money, I would say it should not ever make a transaction that could make me bankrupt. So there could be some limitations placed on several actions where it's like even if I lose some money, there has to be some upper bound on it, and like a provable upper bound, not just telling agent that don't bro don't lose more than $1,000. That doesn't work. So a provable upper bound on how much it can lose with some potential upside there. So for financial agents, for non-financial ones, it's fine. Just do whatever.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, not do whatever. Like there was the one, I don't know, there was the Twitter horror story about it just did RM minus RF. This is very confusing for me, bro. Trust but verify. Like I think, like I'm trusting my agents with a lot of stuff, and sometimes they, not with money, but on at least on Tempo we have native access keys, so we can scope the permissions and the spend limits a little bit. But I think I've been surprised how quickly I've learned to trust them, where I'm not like micromanaging them. I'm giving them bigger and bigger tasks and just be like, you figure it out and just run this and just keep picking me in the background. So that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, even in programming, that's like the best way I've seen of working with agents. Rather than coming up with those complex Claude MD files, just say it. Like whatever problem you face, just say, I don't like this, change it to that, and it just works.
Yeah, Socratic method works very well with agents, I think, basically. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
All right. So this was our last question. Thank you for joining us, Mallesh. Thank you, Shashank. Everybody, please follow Mallesh and Tempo. And thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys.
Bye, everyone. The